Ladies and gentlemen, nobody believed in me until I did this. There was a time when I stood in the shadow of doubt alone, misunderstood, laughed at. They looked at me and said, you could never become anything more than this. And I believed them. For a season, I let their voices echo louder than my own. I wore their rejection like a heavy coat in the heat of destiny. And oh, how it crushed me. But listen to me now, there came a moment, not in the eyes of man, but in the stillness of the night, when I looked in the mirror of my soul and heard a whisper, not from the world, not from the crowd, but from deep within. There comes a moment in every journey where rejection meets you at the door. It doesn't knock gently, it barges in uninvited and makes itself at home. It speaks through the voices of people you love. It hides in the silence of friends who disappear. It sits in the crowd that watches but never claps. And in those moments, it's easy, so easy, to think maybe they're right, maybe you're not meant for more. Maybe the dream was too big. Maybe you've overreached, overestimated, overstepped. But hear this. Rejection is not a prophecy. It's not a verdict. It's a moment, not a definition. Rejection doesn't define your destiny. It never has, and it never will. It only reveals one truth. That the world hasn't caught up with what's inside of you yet. When they say, you can't, what they really mean is, I don't see it. But you were not created for their sight. You were created for purpose. Purpose existed long before their opinions. Before they ever knew your name, purpose knew your steps. Rejection has a way of dressing up as protection. Sometimes it feels like it's crushing you, when in reality, it's saving you from being attached to the wrong people, the wrong places, and the wrong timing. But if you're not careful, you'll start to agree with it. You'll make a home where you were meant to pass through. You'll set down your dreams just to feel the comfort of fitting in, and let me tell you, there is no peace in shrinking to be accepted. They may call you unqualified. They may call you a fool. They may label you with their limited vision. But their words cannot rewrite your calling. They don't have the pen. Rejection doesn't rewrite the blueprint that was written over your life before you ever took your first breath. You must understand this deep in your bones. When rejection comes, you don't stop, you shift. You don't settle, you stretch. You don't retreat, you rise. There's power in walking forward with nothing but conviction. Power in choosing to keep moving when everyone else walks away. There is something holy about standing where others expect you to fall. Not out of arrogance, not out of rebellion, but out of an inner knowing I was made for more than this moment. Rejection is loud, but purpose is louder if you listen. Purpose whispers in the quiet, when the noise of applause has died and all that remains is the sound of your own heartbeat and the question, will you still go? You can't afford to let rejection become your mirror. If you look into it too long, it will lie to you. It will tell you you're not enough. It will remind you of your past. It will rehearse every flaw, every mistake, every failure. But rejection has selective memory. It forgets how far you've come. It forgets the battles you've already won. It doesn't see the fire that refused to go out inside of you, even when the world poured water on your flame. So when they turn away, let them. When they laugh, let them. When they say, you'll never make it, smile quietly. Because the truth is, they're not the ones who will carry this vision to the end. You are. They don't see what you carry. They don't feel the weight of the dream on your back, the calling that keeps waking you up in the middle of the night, the tears you've cried in secret, the prayers you've whispered in silence. Rejection may have spoken first, but it will not have the last word. Belief is not something that arrives fully formed. It's not loud, not always confident, and certainly not always visible to others. It begins as a whisper inside your spirit, soft, trembling, easily dismissed. It's the voice that says there is something more for you, even when everything around you contradicts it. Before the world ever sees what's possible in you, you must choose to see it yourself. Because belief isn't something others hand to you, it's something you build from within. And until you believe in yourself, no applause, no affirmation, and no validation from others will ever be enough to sustain you. People wait a lifetime for permission. They wait to be picked, to be chosen, to be told, yes, you are the one. But the truth is, most of the time that moment never comes. The call you're waiting for from someone else is actually a call you're meant to answer from within. You must become the one who picks yourself. You must be the one who stands up in a room full of doubt and says, I believe in what I carry. Not because you have it all figured out, not because you've never failed, but because there is something sacred inside of you that refuses to die. Belief doesn't grow in easy places. It grows in deserts. It grows in silence. It grows in the tension between not yet and almost. That's where you learn to listen not to the crowd, but to the still, small voice that tells you to keep going. That's where you find out what you're made of. When no one is clapping, when no one is watching, and when no one understands what you're building, that's when belief takes root. That's when it becomes real. Because belief that depends on being seen is not belief, it's performance. When you believe in yourself, you shift the atmosphere around you. You walk differently. You speak with more weight. You make decisions that others are too afraid to make, not because the fear disappears, but because you're no longer waiting for fear to leave before you move. You understand that belief isn't the absence of fear, it's the refusal to bow to it. It's the quiet courage to take one more step, even if you're still shaking. Even if your knees are buckling under the weight of uncertainty, you take the step anyway. People may not understand you. They may not see what you see. But belief is not dependent on consensus. It only needs one voice, yours. The same voice that once questioned, once doubted, once whispered, "Maybe I'm not enough," must now rise and declare, "I am." Not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. Because you carry something inside of you that this world needs. And that alone makes you worthy of belief. You have to understand that belief isn't arrogance. It's not pretending you have no weaknesses. It's knowing your weaknesses and showing up anyway. It's saying, "I know the odds. I see the statistics, but I also see the vision, and I choose the vision." Belief in yourself is not a feeling, it's a decision. One you make again and again, even when the results haven't come. Even when it looks like you're going backward. Even when the support you thought you had disappears overnight. There is something magnetic about someone who believes in themselves. Not loudly, not for show, but deeply. That kind of belief draws things to you, opportunities, connections, breakthroughs, not because you chased them, but because you became the kind of person who could carry them. When you believe in yourself, truly and unapologetically, you stop asking for space and start taking it. You stop waiting for doors to open and start building your own. Because once you believe, everything begins to shift, not around you, but inside you. And once it shifts inside, the outside will follow. There's a lie that many people live under. The belief that their calling requires approval. That before they can move, they need applause. That before they can speak, someone must grant them a stage. But purpose doesn't come with permission slips. Destiny is not something handed down by the comfortable or the familiar. Your calling doesn't need their approval, because it wasn't given by them in the first place. It was placed deep within you by something far greater than human opinion. People often misunderstand what they don't recognize. They'll question your motives, laugh at your beginnings, dismiss your voice, and reduce your dream to something they can manage. But the calling on your life isn't supposed to be manageable to others. It's not meant to make sense to everyone. If they didn't hear what you heard in the quiet, if they weren't there when the fire started in your spirit, then of course they won't understand what drives you. And that's okay. Their understanding isn't required for you to move. If you live for their approval, you will die by their rejection. Because approval is fleeting. One moment they celebrate you, the next they forget your name. If you anchor your movement to their applause, you'll only move when they clap. But callings demand more than that. Callings require movement in the silence. They require steps when no one is watching. They require that you continue even when the voices of support go quiet, and the ones you hoped would stand beside you walk away. You were not called to convince anyone. You were called to carry something, to birth something into the world that didn't exist before. That doesn't require a vote. It doesn't require a committee. It doesn't even require agreement. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk forward in the face of disapproval, not in defiance, but in devotion to what you know you were born for. Because when the calling is real, it won't leave you alone. It will pull at you in the stillness. It will wake you in the night. It will ache inside of you until you answer. There will be people who try to measure your vision by their limitations. They'll project their fears onto your journey. They'll say it can't be done. Not because it can't, but because they couldn't do it. And if you're not careful, you'll adopt their ceiling as your own. You'll start to shrink your dream to fit their comfort. You'll mute your voice so they don't feel small. But the calling wasn't designed to make people comfortable. It was designed to stretch you into something greater. Every step you take without approval is a declaration that you trust what's been placed inside you, that you don't need external validation to act on internal conviction, that you're no longer waiting to be picked. You've already picked yourself. That shift in mindset is everything. Because once you stop seeking approval, you start seeking alignment. You begin moving with intentionality. You start showing up with clarity. You're not trying to impress anymore. You're trying to fulfill. The most dangerous thing you can do is wait. Wait for someone to see your value. Wait for someone to say you're enough. Wait for someone to invite you into your own destiny. But you weren't made to wait. You were made to walk. Even if the road is unfamiliar, even if the voices are few, even if the approval never comes, the only question is, will you go anyway? Will you trust the call, even if it's just a whisper? Will you answer even when others doubt it's real? Because the truth is, if you don't honor the calling, you'll always be haunted by what could have been. Approval may make you feel safe, but only obedience to your calling will make you feel alive. There is a sound that echoes deeper than applause, a rhythm that builds in the silence, in the struggle, in the unseen hours where no one is watching. Persistence is louder than applause because applause is a moment, but persistence is a movement. Applause fades. It comes in waves, unpredictable and often conditional. One day they cheer for you, the next they forget you. But persistence keeps showing up long after the clapping has stopped. When you rely on applause, your strength is tied to other people's attention. You become addicted to being seen, to being praised, to being affirmed. But applause was never meant to sustain a soul on fire. What fuels lasting impact, what carries a vision to the finish line, is the quiet resolve to keep going when no one is looking. It's showing up in the early morning, staying late into the night, doing the work when no spotlight is shining on you. That's where greatness is forged. That's where character is built, not on stages but in the shadows. Persistence doesn't need a crowd. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. It thrives in resistance. It survives discouragement. It lives on despite rejection. There's something sacred about doing the right thing over and over, even when it seems like nothing is changing. That kind of discipline, that kind of commitment, creates a force that cannot be stopped by mere opinion. It becomes a fire that burns through opposition, a light that cannot be dimmed by silence. There are moments in every journey when you will ask, is it even working? You will wonder if it matters. You will question whether the effort is worth it. And in those moments, you will be tempted to measure your value by the response you receive. But that is the trap. Because the greatest breakthroughs come not when the crowd is cheering, but when you press through the noise of doubt and discouragement, and you keep going anyway. Persistence is what separates the dreamers from the doers. It is what turns vision into reality. Not in an instant, but over time. People may notice your success one day, but they'll never see the 1,000 invisible battles it took to get there. They won't see the nights you cried in frustration, the days you wanted to give up, the sacrifices no one applauded. But you will know. You will remember. And what kept you going in those moments was not applause. It was purpose. Purpose gives birth to persistence. When you know why you started, when you understand what's at stake, you don't need a cheering section. You become your own echo, reminding yourself that quitting is not an option. There will be detours, delays, doors that shut in your face. But persistence turns rejection into redirection. It takes every no and walks through it until it finds a oasis. It keeps building when others walk away. It keeps planting even when there is no sign of harvest. And that kind of determination becomes undeniable. It begins to speak for itself. Long after the applause is gone, your consistency will still be standing. The truth is, applause may open a door, but only persistence can keep it open. Talent may get you noticed, but persistence earns you respect. The world is full of people who started something, but few finish, few endure. Few push through the grind, the boredom, the discomfort, the doubt. And it is in the endurance that true greatness is revealed. Because what makes you unforgettable is not how loud the crowd was when you succeeded. It's how quiet it was when you kept going. Failure is one of the most misunderstood companions on the journey to purpose. People treat it like an enemy, like something to be ashamed of, something to hide or outrun. But failure is not the end of your story. It's a necessary chapter. It's not the final word. It's a tool, a teacher, a mirror. It shows you not just what went wrong, but what you're made of. The greatest transformations never come from success alone. They are born in the fire of failure. It is in falling that we learn to rise. It is in breaking that we learn to rebuild stronger. You can't avoid failure if you're truly trying to grow. Playing it safe, staying small, doing only what you know will work. That's not living, that's surviving. Growth comes from reaching beyond your current capacity. And any time you stretch, you risk falling. But that fall is not your defeat. It's an invitation. An invitation to go deeper, to get clearer, to dig your roots down into something more stable than applause, more lasting than ease. The ones who make it aren't the ones who never fail. They are the ones who fail and get back up. Again and again. They are the ones who don't take failure personally but take it seriously. They study it, they learn from it. They adjust and adapt and keep going. Failure doesn't define them, it refines them. Every setback becomes a setup. Every no becomes a new direction. Every breakdown becomes the soil for a breakthrough. It's tempting to think that failure disqualifies you, that it proves the critics right, that it means you're not good enough. But that's the voice of fear speaking. That's the voice of perfectionism and pride, because failure humbles you in the best way. It strips away the illusion that you can do this on your own, that you have to get it all right the first time. It teaches you to rely on something deeper than talent, grit, grace, and resilience. It forces you to look in the mirror and choose whether to stay down or stand up again with more clarity, more courage, and more commitment. Some of the most brilliant breakthroughs have come from people who failed big. Not once, but many times. They weren't superhuman. They were willing. Willing to look foolish. Willing to be misunderstood. Willing to keep showing up when nothing seemed to be working. Because they understood that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a part of it. A necessary part. The kind that purifies your motives and strengthens your resolve. Failure tests the authenticity of your vision. Anyone can pursue a dream when everything is working. But when the dream starts to crumble, when the doors close, when the support dries up, that's when your belief is revealed. That's when you find out if you were chasing a fantasy or answering a call. The ones who endure failure and still keep going. They're the ones who know that this thing is bigger than them. They're not just doing it for approval or recognition. They're doing it because something inside won't let them quit. And that's where power begins. Not in perfection, but in persistence. Not in always being right, but in always getting back up. You don't become strong by avoiding pain. You become strong by walking through it. Failure doesn't ruin you. It reveals you. It introduces you to yourself. It calls out the part of you that refuses to settle. And though it may feel like everything is falling apart, sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen for the pieces to fall into place. There comes a point in every journey where you realize no one is coming to save you. Not because people don't care, but because they can't carry what was meant for you. The dream, the vision, the calling. It was given to you, not them. And with that realization comes a quiet reckoning. If this is going to happen, it's going to be because I stood up, I moved forward, I stopped waiting and started becoming. You cannot outsource your breakthrough. You cannot delegate your transformation. The life you want is waiting on the version of you that's willing to fight for it. You may have been hoping someone would notice. Someone would open the door. Someone would see what you've been carrying. But too many people live their lives in a holding pattern, circling the runway, waiting for a signal that may never come. They wait for the timing to be perfect, the fear to disappear, the path to be clear. But nothing changes until you decide to rise. You don't get confidence first. You get courage first. You move afraid. You begin uncertain. And in the act of rising, something shifts inside you. Nobody can do your becoming for you. They can cheer for you. They can believe in you. But they cannot build the life you see in your spirit. That's your work. That's your fire to carry. You may feel unequipped. You may feel like you're not ready. But purpose rarely consults your comfort zone. It calls you beyond what you thought you could do. And you don't become who you're meant to be by staying in who you've always been. There is something powerful about a person who stops waiting for validation and begins walking in conviction. Who decides that even if they walk alone, they will still walk. Who stops apologizing for their passion, for their ambition, for their voice. The world doesn't need more people who blend in. It needs people who rise, who take ownership of their story, who stop pointing fingers, who stop blaming the past, and who begin to declare, I am responsible for what happens next. You can't keep waiting for someone else to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. You can't keep hoping that the right circumstance will finally give you permission to change. You are the permission. You are the shift. You are the answer to the prayer you've been waiting on. And when you rise, when you choose to carry your own weight, when you choose to become the person your future needs, you become unstoppable. Life will test your resolve. It will push back. It will give you every reason to stay down. But rising is a choice. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's getting up one more morning, making one more call, writing one more page, showing up again when it doesn't feel like it's working. The power isn't in the grand gestures. It's in the consistency. It's in the small acts of defiance against hopelessness. It's in saying, I'm still here. Even when no one else notices that you stayed, you are not helpless. You are not stuck. You may be tired, bruised, unsure, but you are not powerless. Every time you choose to rise, even a little, you shift your trajectory. You rewrite the narrative. You step into a version of yourself that doesn't beg for change but becomes it. And that shift, That quiet inner revolution, that's where everything begins. Not when the world changes around you, but when you change within it. Not when someone finally chooses you, but when you finally choose yourself. There is a moment in every life where you must decide whether you will stay in the version of yourself that is familiar or rise into the version that is calling you forward. That moment rarely comes with fanfare. It often arrives in discomfort, in restlessness, in that ache you feel when you know you were made for more, but everything around you looks the same. That ache is not a curse, it is a signal that the time has come to evolve, to step out of the old identity, the old limitations, the old excuses, and grow into who you were always meant to be. Growth is not comfortable. It stretches you. It tests your endurance. It exposes the places you've hidden, the lies you've believed, and the fears you've allowed to govern your decisions. And it will demand that you leave behind the version of yourself that made survival possible. That version may have been strong, may have gotten you through hard seasons, but it is not the version that will take you into your next level. To grow, you must be willing to outgrow. To evolve, you must be willing to let go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring what served you, even if only for a time, and then releasing it with grace. It means not clinging to identities that keep you small just because they feel safe. You are not bound to who you used to be. You are not obligated to stay where you started. Just because you've always done it a certain way doesn't mean that's the only way. There is more in you. There are layers you haven't met yet, strengths that haven't been called forth yet, capacities you haven't had to access, because the next version of you is waiting on the other side of the discomfort you keep avoiding. You don't evolve by accident. You evolve by intention. You evolve by choosing to act differently, think differently, speak differently. You evolve when you stop reacting from old patterns and start responding from new vision. When you stop shrinking to be accepted and start expanding to be aligned. When you stop performing and start embodying. The evolution doesn't start with a new title, a new relationship, or a new opportunity. It starts with a new level of responsibility. A willingness to stop blaming what's outside of you and start cultivating what's inside. This inner work, the shedding, the healing, the confronting, is sacred. It's what creates the kind of transformation that doesn't just change how you look, but who you are. And once you change who you are, what you attract shifts. What you tolerate shifts. What you believe is possible shifts. Because the world will always reflect back to you who you are being. So if you want to change your life, change yourself. Not in a performative way, but in a foundational way. In a way that can't be faked, because it's rooted in the truth of who you are becoming. There will be resistance. The old version of you will fight for its survival. It will whisper that this growth is too much, too fast, too uncertain. It will tempt you to stay where it's familiar. But familiar isn't the same as fulfilled. You weren't made to be stagnant. You weren't made to stay hidden. You were made to evolve, to expand, to rise, to become. And every time you make a decision that aligns with your future instead of your past, you step deeper into that evolution. Every time you say yes to growth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unclear, you are becoming more of who you were designed to be. This path isn't easy. It will stretch every part of you. But it will also free you. It will introduce you to a version of yourself that no longer needs to beg for worth, but walks in it. That no longer needs to prove anything, but lives from a place of deep inner knowing. That's what evolution is. Not becoming someone else, but returning to your most powerful, authentic self. The one you were before fear, before doubt, before smallness became a habit. There is a stillness before every great turning point. A silence that feels like abandonment but is actually preparation. In that quiet space, where nothing seems to be happening, everything is being aligned. It's easy to believe you're being forgotten when the noise dies down, when the invitations stop coming, when the momentum you once had seems to vanish. But not every pause is punishment. Some pauses are divine recalibrations. They are the hush before the unveiling, the whisper before the roar, the stillness before the shift. And in that place, if you can learn to be still and listen, you'll find the strength you didn't know you had. The world has trained us to equate activity with significance. To believe that if we're not moving, producing, being seen, then we're losing. But growth doesn't always look like forward motion. Sometimes it looks like standing your ground. Sometimes it looks like healing in the dark, restructuring behind the scenes, pruning what cannot go with you into the next season. Trees grow in winter too, but not upward downward, not in fruit, but in roots. And you must understand that what feels like delay is often design, that the quiet season is not a detour, but a deepening. Too often we try to rush through the silence. We get uncomfortable in the stillness, so we force movement. We reach for distractions, chase after validation, take detours that cost us years. But what if the waiting is sacred? What if the silence is not empty, but full of instruction? What if the season where it looks like nothing is working is the very season where the foundation is being fortified? The process you are resenting may be the very process that is preserving you. Because not all success is sustainable, not all growth is stable, and anything built too quickly without roots is easily shaken. You are not being overlooked, you are being made ready, you are being refined for what you asked for. The greater the calling, the deeper the preparation. You cannot carry weight you haven't trained for. You cannot step into rooms your character isn't ready to sustain. And sometimes the silence is where that character is forged. In obscurity, in private, in the wrestle between who you were and who you're becoming. It is there when no one is watching that the most important breakthroughs occur. Not outside of you, but within. This quiet season is not your enemy. It's your ally. It's stripping away the noise so you can hear your own voice again. It's cutting off false sources so you can reconnect with the true source. It's breaking down the identities you created out of fear so you can live from truth. And in that process you begin to remember. You remember what really matters. You remember why you started. You remember who you were before you learned to perform. That remembrance becomes your strength. That clarity becomes your compass. In the silence, you are not falling behind. You are being pulled deeper. Deeper into alignment, deeper into authenticity, deeper into preparation. And when it is time, when the season shifts, when the doors open, you won't have to chase opportunity. It will recognize you. Because you'll be ready. You'll have roots that can hold the weight of the harvest. You'll have a foundation built not on applause, but on truth. You'll be able to walk through what once would have crushed you, not because it got easier, but because you got stronger in the quiet. So don't despise the silence. Don't rush the stillness. Don't abort the process because it doesn't look the way you thought it would. Trust what is happening beneath the surface. Trust the becoming that is taking place in the unseen. Trust that this moment, right now, in the quiet, in the waiting, in the stillness, is part of the promise. Not separate from it, not delaying it, but forming it, shaping it, birthing it. Because everything you are becoming is being cultivated here, where it feels like nothing is happening, but where, in truth, everything is being prepared certainly. Here is a powerful conclusion that brings together the themes of the entire speech. Rising from unbelief, facing failure, embracing growth, enduring the silence, and ultimately stepping into purpose. So when they say, nobody believed in you, let them speak. Because belief was never supposed to start with them. It was supposed to start within you. Every doubt, every failure, every closed door, every silent season, it all carried a hidden invitation to become. To stop waiting for approval and start walking in identity. To stop surviving and start rising. To trade who you were for who you were born to be. This is not the story of someone who had it easy. This is the story of someone who kept showing up when it didn't make sense. Who rose again and again when there was no applause. Who learned to stand, not because the world lifted them, but because they found something unshakable within. This is the story of someone who stopped asking for permission and decided they were enough, chosen, ready. And now let it be known, you don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to believe deeply enough that you refuse to quit. Because that belief, that decision, that moment when you finally said, I'm not waiting anymore, that's when everything began to change. That's when heaven took notice. That's when the tide turned. That's when Elu became the evidence that the underdog always had a purpose, and that the impossible always answers to those who dare to rise.